In the summer of 2000, two exhausted entrepreneurs entered Blockbuster's headquarters in Dallas with an offer. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph were running a small DVD-by-mail company called Netflix. It was losing money, the dot-com market was collapsing, and they believed Blockbuster could give their idea the scale it needed. Their proposal valued Netflix at $50 million. Blockbuster said no. 10 years later, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. Netflix was already streaming films directly into millions of homes. It looks like one of the simplest mistakes in business history. An old company failed to recognize the future. But that version hides the more important story. Blockbuster did recognize the threat. It built an online service, removed late fees, and for a brief moment created a system that genuinely frightened Netflix. Then debt, internal conflict, and the economics of 9,000 physical stores pulled the company backward. Blockbuster did not die because it could not see the future. It died because it could not afford to leave the past. The first Blockbuster opened in Dallas in October 1985. Its founder, David Cook, did not come from Hollywood. He had written software for the Texas oil industry. When that business weakened, his wife Sandy suggested video rental. Most rental shops were small, crowded, and difficult to manage. Titles were hidden behind counters. Inventory was tracked by hand. A customer could spend 20 minutes searching for a film that was not there. Cook treated the store as an information problem. The first Blockbuster displayed thousands of tapes on bright open shelves. Barcodes and computers tracked each cassette, each customer, and each rental. The store could measure demand and stock multiple copies of popular releases. It felt larger, cleaner, and more dependable than the neighborhood competition. The blue and yellow ticket was not yet a symbol of nostalgia. It represented a new kind of retail machine, standardized, data-driven, and designed to scale. In 1987, entrepreneur Wayne Huizenga and a group of investors took control of the young chain. Huizenga had already built waste management by buying small local operators and combining them into a national company. He applied the same playbook to video rental. Blockbuster acquired regional chains, converted independent stores, opened new locations, and expanded through franchising. A store could be copied from one suburb to the next. The same colors, the same layout, the same promise that the newest films would be available. By 1988, Blockbuster had roughly 400 stores. It passed 1,000 in the early 1990s and expanded overseas. In 1994, Viacom acquired the company in a multi-billion-dollar deal. Blockbuster had become more than a retailer. It was a source of cash, customers, and distribution power inside a global media empire. The system worked because visiting a video store was part of the entertainment. Families browsed shelves, debated choices, bought snacks, and carried a film home for the weekend. For a time, Blockbuster did not simply rent movies. It owned movie night. The empire also contained a weakness. Every rental had a deadline. When customers returned a tape or disc late, Blockbuster charged an extended viewing fee. Those fees were deeply unpopular, but they were valuable. In its 2004 annual report, Blockbuster estimated that removing them would sacrifice between $400 and $450 million in annual revenue, and as much as $300 million in operating income. That created a dangerous contradiction. One of the company's most hated features had become part of the financial structure supporting its stores. Blockbuster needed thousands of locations close to its customers. Each one carried rent, staff, electricity, inventory, and the risk that an expensive new release would lose value within months. The network was a competitive advantage, while customers had to visit a store. But if entertainment could move through the mail, or eventually through the internet, the same network would become an enormous fixed cost. Blockbuster's greatest strength and its greatest vulnerability were the same thing. Netflix began in 1997 with a different assumption. Instead of asking customers to drive to a store, Netflix used a website, lightweight DVDs, and the postal system. Its early pay-per-rental model was not revolutionary. The breakthrough came with subscriptions, a monthly fee, a queue of films, prepaid return envelopes, and no due dates. There were no late fees because there was no store waiting for a disc to return that night. Netflix simply sent the next title when the previous one came back. The model learned from every choice. Ratings and rental history helped Netflix recommend films that were not sitting on the newest release wall. In 2000, however, Netflix was still fragile. Hastings and Randolph approached Blockbuster with a partnership and acquisition proposal. According to Randolph, Blockbuster would manage the stores while Netflix would run the online business. Blockbuster rejected the $50 million price. At that moment, the decision was less absurd than it appears today. Netflix was an unprofitable startup during a collapsing internet bubble. The real mistake came later, after the threat was impossible to ignore. John Antioco, Blockbuster's chief executive, understood that the rental model was changing. In 2004, the company launched Blockbuster Online. The following year, it announced the end of late fees at most company-operated stores in the United States and Canada. The policy attacked the complaint that had defined the brand, but it also removed hundreds of millions of dollars from the old business before the new one was ready to replace it. Then Blockbuster created its strongest response. Total Access allowed subscribers to receive DVDs by mail and exchange them at participating stores for another rental. Netflix could use the postal system. Blockbuster could use the mail and thousands of local locations. Customers responded. By early 2007, Blockbuster said the service had passed 3 million subscribers. For the first time, the store network looked like an advantage in the internet era. Netflix later acknowledged the pressure. Blockbuster had not missed the transition, it had entered the fight. But competing required the company to finance two businesses at once. Total Access was growing, but growth was expensive. Every online subscriber required marketing, warehouses, postage, discs, and free exchanges inside stores. The program could gain customers while placing more pressure on short-term profit. That divided Blockbuster's leadership. Antioco wanted to keep investing. Activist investor Carl Icahn challenged his strategy, costs, and compensation. The conflict became a battle over what Blockbuster was supposed to protect: the earnings of the existing chain or the possibility of a digital future. Antioco left in 2007. His successor, Jim Keyes, reduced the aggressive online spending and refocused attention on the stores. From a short-term financial perspective, the decision was understandable. The company carried heavy obligations, and the internet business was consuming cash. Strategically, it gave Netflix room. Blockbuster had built a bridge away from physical retail, then slowed down while standing in the middle of it. This was not one foolish executive refusing to change. It was a company whose owners, managers, and balance sheet could not agree on how much pain transformation should be allowed to cause. The competitive landscape was changing from every direction. Redbox placed inexpensive rental kiosks outside supermarkets and pharmacies. Cable companies expanded video on demand. Retailers sold DVDs at prices that made ownership feel almost as cheap as renting. And in 2007, Netflix introduced streaming. The early catalog was limited and the picture quality was modest, but the strategic difference was enormous. A streamed film required no store visit, no envelope, and no physical inventory moving between warehouses and homes. Netflix could improve the service by adding servers, software, licensing agreements, and compatible devices. Blockbuster still had to support leases, employees, shelves, distribution centers, and thousands of stores while attempting the same transition. In 2009, Blockbuster still operated more than 7,000 locations worldwide. That scale looked impressive in a company presentation. In a rapidly shrinking physical rental market, it behaved like weight. The faster customers changed their habits, the more urgently Blockbuster needed cash. The more urgently it needed cash, the harder it became to fund the future. Blockbuster's financial freedom was already limited. The company had been separated from Viacom in 2004 with substantial debt. Store closures cost money before they saved money. Falling rental revenue reduced the cash available for interest payments, online investment, and restructuring. The financial crisis made refinancing more difficult. By the beginning of 2010, Blockbuster reported total debt, including capital lease obligations, of nearly $964 million. Management closed hundreds of stores and conserved cash. The company experimented with kiosks, mail subscriptions, and digital delivery, but it was now reacting across too many channels with too little time. On September 23, 2010, Blockbuster and several United States subsidiaries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The filing was not the moment the company suddenly lost to Netflix. It was the moment years of shrinking demand, fixed costs, strategic conflict, and debt finally removed the ability to choose. Dish Network acquired substantially all of Blockbuster's assets in 2011. The remaining company-operated stores in the United States closed in 2014. One Blockbuster franchise remains in Bend, Oregon. It survives partly as a functioning rental store and partly as a museum of a shared ritual. Walking through aisles, reading boxes, asking an employee for a recommendation, and discovering a film because its cover looked interesting. That experience explains why the brand still produces affection. Blockbuster offered something algorithms cannot perfectly reproduce: a physical place where choosing the movie was part of the night. But nostalgia should not soften the business lesson. The company had information. It saw DVD by mail, subscriptions, kiosks, video on demand, and streaming. It tried nearly all of them. What it lacked was the freedom to make the new business more important than the old one. Netflix could build around changing customer behavior. Blockbuster had to change customer behavior without destroying the cash flow that supported its debt and stores. By the time the old system became obviously unsustainable, it had also become too expensive to escape. The $50 million meeting makes a perfect headline. It was not the whole failure. Blockbuster's real mistake was building a company so dependent on stores, late fees, and physical inventory that even the correct digital strategy became financially and politically difficult to sustain. The company recognized Netflix. It copied the subscription. It used its stores creatively. For a short period, it fought harder than the simple legend remembers. Then it protected the machine that had made it powerful. Disruption is often described as blindness. The old company cannot see what is coming. Blockbuster shows a more dangerous possibility. A company can see the future clearly and still be trapped by the cost of reaching it. If stories like this help you see familiar companies differently, subscribe to Chronos AI. We tell the hidden history of the businesses that built the modern world and the decisions that changed them forever.